To my YouTube channel. This is the second half of my discussion on measures of variability. So in this video, I'll be discussing variance and standard deviation. Let's get started. Moving on to the next and more important measures of variability, we have here variance. So variance is a statistic that tells you how close your scores or your data are to the mean. So this is an important measure of this dispersion. Sometimes it's also called the mean of the squared deviation. Next is the standard deviation. Standard deviation is quite easy to find out. It's just the square root of your variance. So if you already got a value for your variance, you can easily find the standard deviation by getting the square root. So most of the time, standard deviation is the value that is being used to describe the variation of a certain distribution. Let's go now to the actual calculation or computation for the variance. So here we have three key steps, and we are given a distribution which has the title of weeks of unemployment. So for our scores here tell us the number of weeks, and that the scores are on column or the first column. So it says here that our first step is to solve for the mean. Now getting the mean, we simply add all the scores and divide by the number of scores. So we add all the scores or number of weeks and divide by 6. That's the number of scores. So we get 5 here as our mean. Step 2, we calculate or compute for the deviation. So deviation simply means the difference of the mean from the score. So simply subtract the score and the mean. So in this case, say our first score here is 9, subtracting it by 5, our mean. So 9 minus 5, we get a deviation of 4. So with 8 minus 5 is 3, and so on. Third step is to square these deviations. So squaring the deviations, or squaring, so just like squaring all our values in the second column. So 4 square 4, that's 16, 3 squared is 9, 1 squared is 1, so on. Finally, we get to our formula, which is s squared, or the variance, that's a symbol for variance, is equal to the summation of the square deviations, that's x minus mean, then squared, divided by n. Now, earlier we said that variance is also known as the mean of the squared deviation. So if you compare this formula with the formula in getting the mean, they're almost similar. Only that for variance, we get the deviation and we square and we divide it by n. So going back to our distribution, weeks on unemployment, we go back to our third column, which has the square deviations. So the square deviations. So we have here 16, 9, 1, 1, 9, and 16. So if we add all of these, we should get 52. And that 52 can be our numerator for our formula. Remember our formula then? Or our formula in getting the variance is the summation or the sum of the square deviation. So the square deviation are all in column 3, and we took the sum, that's 52, and we divided by the by the number of the scores, which is 6. So 52 divided by 6. So we have here, that's 8.67. That 8.67 is our variance. Now moving on to our next and the last measure of variability, the standard deviation. Earlier we defined it to be the um, the standard deviation from the mean, and it's quite easy to solve for it because we just need to extract the square root of our variance. Now going back to our distribution, weeks on unemployment. Earlier we already solved for the variance, which is 8.67. Now remember that the formula for the variance is the summation of the square deviation divided by n. Now if we want to get the standard deviations, it simply is the square root of this, or square root of the variance. So the square root of the summation of the square deviation divided by n, and so we square the value of our variance at 8.67. The square root therefore is 2.94, and the symbol for our standard deviation is s. So s is equal to 2.94. In summary, the standard deviation that we got on this specific distribution, weeks on unemployment, which is 2.94, or roughly 3. That value of 3 implies 3 weeks. Now the implication of this standard deviation, this value, this specific statistic, is that there is an average of 3 weeks of unemployment from the mean of 5 weeks. So our mean is 5, and each score deviates an average of 5, no, not 5, deviates an average of 3 or 3 weeks. So if you remember, we have scores like 9, 8, 6, and so with our lower scores, 4 and 1. Now these scores, if you get the average of deviation, it will give you a value of 3. Now good thing here, because we only have 6 scores, but if we have a bigger group of scores, the getting the deviation would not be that handy. But with the way we did it using the formula, it would be handy or easy. So I hope you learned something from today's video. Thank you for watching. And if you have some questions, you can write them in the comment section of this video. Thank you, and God bless us.